We are causing a problem to our own body by consuming these drugs, maybe knowingly or unknowingly. So heroin is the market name for this particular drug, that is opioids. The function of those is to carry oxygen from the alveoli of the lungs to different parts of the body. It can also cause premature closure of the growth centers. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to this session for class 12 biology. I'm Dr. Divya, biology faculty. So in this session of chapter 7, that is human health and disease, we shall learn about drugs and alcohol abuse. So we'll learn about the different plants that can be used as drugs and how drugs are obtained out of that. And also we'll learn about how exactly these drugs and alcohol can lead to a lot of ill effects in the human beings. So to begin with, we'll learn about the drugs which are commonly abused. So when we say abuse means we are causing a problem to our own body by consuming these drugs, maybe knowingly or unknowingly. So there are a number of plants which can be used as drugs. So they are the opioids, the cannabinoids and the coca alkaloids. So opioids, they are obtained from the plant which is called as poppy plant, and cannabinoids is obtained from the plant Cannabis sativa, and coca alkaloids are obtained from the plant Erythroxylum coca. For example, Cannabis sativa has a lot of medicinal properties also, but because it can be used as an antidepressant to relieve stress in some of the patients who are into depression and all that. But at the same time, they are abused to such an extent that it is being used as a drug, and that is why, though this plant has a lot of medicinal properties, it is still illegal to use this plant because of the drug abuse. Similarly, talking about poppy plant is nothing but the cuscus or the poppy seeds that we use for various culinary purposes. So this plant also, it can be used as a drug. So therefore, these plants are also, large-scale cultivation of these plants are also considered to be illegal. And majority of these drugs are obtained from the flowering plants, and some of the drugs are also obtained from the fungi. So there are some mushrooms which can affect our nervous system and it can create hallucinations. So there are some fungi also which can be used as a drug, especially some of the mushrooms which are available, which can be used as drugs because they have some hallucination properties, just like how these flowering plants have. Now talking about each of these one by one. So opioids. So we'll talk about the drug opioids. Opioids are the drugs which bind to specific opioid receptors. So in a brain, we have our brain is the region which receives signals from the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, and a brain acts according to the signals or neurotransmitters which are received from the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So if similarly, when we consume drugs, for example, when opioids are consumed, these opioids, they go and bind to specific opioid receptors which are present in a central nervous system and gastrointestinal tract. So this is an important MCQ. Where are the opioid receptors present? They are present in the central nervous system as well as the gastrointestinal tract. One of the best example for an opioid is heroin. So heroin is the market name for this particular drug, that is opioid. So heroin is commonly called as smack. So one more name for that is smack. And chemically, heroin is nothing but it is a diacetyl morphine. And to look at it, its texture or its color, it is white, it is odorless, that is, it doesn't have any smell. And to taste, it is bitter, and its texture is crystalline, just like sugar or salt, almost like salt. It is crystalline in texture. And it is obtained by a process, a chemical reaction wherein morphine, which is a chemical compound that is present in these plants, that is poppy plant, they are subjected to acetylation. So acetylation of morphine is done, which is extracted from the latex of poppy plant, that is Papaver somniferum. So from where is this opioids extracted? Opioids are Raw opioids are extracted from the poppy plant, and the name of the poppy plant is Papaver somniferum, the scientific name. So this morphine that is extracted from that particular plant, it is subjected to a process called as acetylation, and therefore we get diacetyl morphine is a compound that is got by acetylation of morphine, which is got from the Papaver somniferum plant. Now that diacetyl morphine is sold in the name of heroin. So what is heroin? Heroin is nothing but diacetyl morphine. Where is it got? It is got from the poppy plant. Do you get diacetyl morphine directly from the poppy plant? No. We get it in the form of morphine. That morphine is subjected to acetylation process wherein we'll get diacetyl morphine. And this drug, that is heroin, is usually taken by snorting. So what is snorting? Snorting is, it is taken through the nose wherein they roll papers and they directly, those crystalline powders that are there, they will just pull it out or they'll inhale it through the nose. So that is called as snorting, and it is also taken intravenously, that is in the form of injection, and these are the way it is taken. So heroin also has a medical property or medicinal property in it. So what does heroin do to our body? So heroin actually, it acts as a depressant and it slows down the body function. So feel that we are in a world that is a fantasy kind of world because of the activity of the heroin. So this is about opioid wherein we took heroin as an example. So next we'll talk about another drug which is called as cannabinoids. So cannabinoids are a group of chemicals which interact with the cannabinoid receptor. Similarly, in a brain, that is in the central nervous system, especially the brain, there are some receptors which are capable of accepting the cannabinoid drug that we consume. And these natural cannabinoids that are there, they are obtained from the inflorescence, that is the group of flowers of the plant Cannabis sativa. So poppy from Papaver somniferum, or opioids from Papaver somniferum, cannabinoids from Cannabis sativa. The flower tops of this particular plant, the leaves and the resin, which is nothing but a sticky gum-like substance, which is obtained from the cannabis plant, they are used in various combinations to produce drugs with different names called as marijuana, hashish, charas and ganja. So from where is marijuana, hashish, charas and ganja obtained? They are obtained from the cannabis plant, that is Cannabis sativa. So they are distilled in different combinations and these drugs are obtained. And this drugs, how it is generally consumed? So it is consumed by inhalation, and that is through the nose, through inhalation, and also through oral ingestion, that is by chewing and taking it. So oral ingestion, and these drugs, that is the cannabinoids, they directly affect the cardiovascular system of a body, that is the heart. And the cannabinoids are nowadays being abused by the sports person because this cannabinoids, it gives a lot of energy or strength to the body. So therefore, it is also being used by the sports person who are in athletics and all that. So they are being abused by the sports person. All these drugs, be it opioids or cannabinoids, when taken in moderate, it is actually helpful because it can relieve stress of an individual. But on the other hand, these drugs are addictive. So once if we take, we cannot stop. So it is always better to prevent consuming these particular opioids and cannabinoids and all that. So next we'll talk about coca alkaloid. So coca alkaloid is nothing but cocaine. It is called as cocaine. So what is opioids called? Opioids, one more name for that is smack, right? Similarly, here coca alkaloid, one more name for that is cocaine. It is obtained from the plant Erythroxylum coca, which is native to South America. So therefore, these cocaine, usually if you have watched a lot of documentaries and all that, cocaine runs around mostly in South America and also towards Mexico. So there it is more because the plant is available in South America. It is native to South America. And what does this cocaine do? So cocaine, if consumed, it directly interferes with the transport of the neurotransmitter, that is dopamine. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and what are the functions of the neurotransmitter? To carry messages to different parts of a body, like to what we exactly need to do, right? So it interferes with that, and cocaine, commonly called coke or crack is usually snorted. So how is it consumed? By snorting, just like opioids it is, or heroin, it is consumed by snorting. And it has a potent stimulating action on the central nervous system, wherein it produces a kind of euphoria. Euphoria is a kind of sudden urge for happiness. You'll feel too happy when we consume cocaine because it acts or the neurotransmitter, and proper signals will not be sent to the brain exactly as to what we do, leading to euphoria or a sudden burst of happiness. And also it increases the energy of that particular person only for that time being, but after that the body starts to feel weak again. And excessive dosage of cocaine, it can cause hallucination as if we are in a fantasy world or in a dreamland. So that kind of situation a person will be put into if he is consuming cocaine. And there are, apart from these plants, that is apart from Papaver somniferum, apart from Cannabis sativa, and apart from Erythroxylum coca, there are other plants also which are locally available which have hallucinogenic properties. For example, Atropa belladonna and Datura. Atropa belladonna has a bell kind of flowers, and this Datura, most of the wastelands, if you see, you can find Datura growing. It is quite common. So these, if you achieve the leaves of the Datura and all that, it creates a hallucinogenic property. So therefore, these are also can be plants which can be abused if consumed in a large extent. Next, talking about drug abuse. So how are these plants, how it can lead to drug abuse? So these drugs, be it some of the opioids, some of the cannabinoids, or some of the coca alkaloids, they can be used as medicine because they are capable of treating depression and insomnia. For example, there are some medicines in the name called as barbiturates, amphetamines, benzodiazepines. All these are medicines which can be used to treat patients who are in depression, but these drugs are abused by the people. So they consume that in large quantities because they actually give them a hallucinogenic property or a effect of euphoria and all that. So that is how it gets abused. So any medicine related to depression and all that, if taken in moderate, it actually does good to the person because it helps the person feel happy and bring down his depression to a certain extent. But these drugs are abused by the people on a larger scale. And there are some drugs which can be used as a sedative and painkiller, especially for a major surgery or something like that. In order to bear the pain, we need sedatives and painkiller, right? For that, morphine can be used, but morphine, which is obtained from poppy, that is Papaver somniferum, is abused in the name of heroin, right? So that is how drugs usually get abused by the people who are addicted to it. And there are several plants, fruits and seeds which have hallucinogenic properties. For example, we took the example of Atropa belladonna and Datura plant, right? But those are not being abused, but who knows, maybe in the future people might start extracting chemicals out of it and treating it and altering it and use it as drugs because they have hallucinogenic properties in them. And these plants have been used since hundreds of years in our folklore medicines, religious ceremonies and rituals all over the globe. So we might have seen sadhus and all that who smoke, right? They chew tobacco, they smoke, some of the people chew tobacco and all that. All that in moderate is fine, but if it is used in a larger extent, it can lead to a lot of ill effects in the body. So when these are taken for a purpose other than medicine use or in amounts of frequency, it constitutes drug abuse. So all these drugs, as I told you, they have medicinal properties in them if it can be used, if used moderately. But if it is used unethically in larger amounts of frequency, then we call it as drug abuse. So this is about drug abuse. So we'll talk about some of the plants which are abused as a drug. So one is tobacco plant. So tobacco, of course, we all know about tobacco, right? So whatever cigarettes that are available, inside that cigarette, what is stuffed, it is nothing but tobacco. Some people, they even chew the dried leaves of tobacco. That is the kind of addiction they have towards it, right? And smoking also paves the way to hard drugs. And tobacco has been used by humans for more than 400 years, and it is smoked, chewed, or even it is used as snuff. So you might have seen the old people in villages and all that, they'll have in a small bottle, they'll have a brown color powder which they taken through their nose, and that they taken because it will keep them calm, and apart from that it is said to cure cold and all that according to them, right? But all these are abuse. It is nothing but tobacco in it. Along with other medicinal plant, it also has tobacco in it, but it is being abused on a larger scale. And tobacco contain a lot of chemical substance, and the major chemical substance present in tobacco is nicotine. And nicotine, which is an alkaloid, and nicotine is said to be addictive. That is why some of the people who consume tea, they are quite addictive to tea. They can't live without it, because in tea also there is a lot of nicotine content present, right? That is also addictive. So nicotine, what does it do? So the nicotine stimulates the adrenal gland. So the adrenal gland is a small triangular shaped gland that is present above the kidney, right? And this adrenal gland, when nicotine is consumed, adrenaline gets released from the adrenaline gland, and also noradrenaline gets released from the adrenal gland. It enters into the bloodstream, it circulates in the bloodstream, and it raises the blood pressure, and it increases the heart rate of the individual. So in such cases, sometimes they feel they have a lot of energy for just that particular moment. So be it the coffee that we drink, the tea that we drink, it only messes up with the brain, wherein it just alters the functioning of the brain, or we can say it just dupes the brain for a certain second to feel that you have got enough amount of energy to work the entire day. But it's not that. But again, once the effect comes down, we get back to the normal low energy, right? So therefore, nicotine is one such compound which gives us high amount of energy, and it makes us enthusiastic to work, but only for a shorter period. And it is one of the drug which is highly abused, because tobacco is a drug which is abused in the form of smoking, in the form of snuff, in the form of chewing and all that. Smoking, and we all know that smoking is injurious to health, right? Because it causes cancer, especially cancer of the lungs. And not just that, also tobacco can cause cancer of the urinary bladder, it can cause cancer of the throat, and smoking can cause bronchitis also. Apart from that, it can cause emphysema, which is a condition of the lungs. It can also cause coronary heart diseases, and it can also cause gastric ulcers in the intestine of the individual who smokes or consumes tobacco on a larger extent. Tobacco chewing is always associated with an increased risk of cancer, especially the cancer of the oral or the buccal cavity. And smoking increases carbon monoxide content in the blood, and carbon monoxide content in the blood, it reduces the concentration of the heme-bound oxygen. Because what is the function of the hemoglobin in the blood? The function of the hemoglobin is made up of 4 iron molecules, and the function of those is to carry oxygen from the alveoli of the lungs to different parts of the body, right? That is the function of the RBC, because RBC is the one that contains heme. So when the number of heme-bound compounds decreases in a body, or the amount of hemoglobin decreases, therefore the circulation of oxygen also decreases in the body. So, and the main reason for the reduction in the concentration of heme-bound oxygen is because when we smoke, too much of carbon monoxide gets accumulated. Instead of, we are not taking in carbon dioxide, but we are taking in carbon monoxide. So that is the reason. And this causes oxygen deficiency in the body. So sometimes you can see people who are chain smokers, their nails or their lips and all that will be blue. It is because of this particular reason, lack of enough amount of oxygen in the body. And also they will not be able to make proper decisions. Their behavior also will change. All that is because of this, because oxygen is also needed for the proper functioning of the brain. So this is about the drug abuse, wherein we took tobacco as an example. So next we'll talk about adolescence and drug or alcohol abuse. So usually people who are adolescent age, so adolescence means that is 12 to 18 years of age, who are neither completely mature nor completely kids. They are in an incomplete stage wherein they are always in a confusion. That is called, adolescence is almost a confusion stage wherein a lot of curiosity and experimentation happens. So usually it is during this period people get addicted to drugs. So adolescence is one of the very vulnerable phase wherein a lot of mental and psychological development of an individual will take place. So it is a age where people are curious to learn new things. So that is the reason. And there are a lot of factors why especially children during the time of adolescence, they get into a lot of bad habits, especially drug and alcohol abuse. Later on, once they cross this particular adolescence stage and they become mature, then they will be capable of judging between the good and the bad. And I can put it in this way, that adolescence is such a stage that they can't judge between the good and the bad. They listen to their friends or the people around them. So that is why it's quite a vulnerable stage. So what are the factors for children, especially the adolescents, to be prone to drug and alcohol abuse at that particular age? One is curiosity. So they want to experiment or try new things. So that is curiosity. The other one is stress. A lot of stress, because adolescence, that is 12 to 18, is considered to be an age which changes their career, changes the way they live and all that. So in terms of education and all that, a lot of stress is being put to them. And also it's a age wherein they don't know what needs to be done. They don't want to take the advice of others, neither they know what needs to be done. So that all that creates a lot of stress in them. So stress is one of the thing. And one more thing is cool or progressive to smoke. So they think that if you smoke, your friends feel that it is cool, and they feel that you have progressed, you are somewhere, think high about you. So that is what they feel. So that is one of the reason they get into drug and alcohol abuse. One more is the television, movies, newspapers, internet. They all play a very, very important role in also promoting drug and alcohol abuse in adolescents. And apart from that, unstable or unsupportive family structures and also peer pressure by the relatives and all that, especially comparison. It is always bad to compare one kid with the other, because every kid is special and is different, right? So all that pressure that the parents or the family members put on them can also lead to drug and alcohol abuse. And unsupportive. So always during this age, that is during the age of adolescence, it is quite common for the child to get angry. So the parents also tend to shout at them. They don't want to make them understand in a good way. So all that can also lead to drug and alcohol abuse, or the use of drug and alcohol right from the adolescent age in the children. So this is about drug and alcohol abuse in adolescence. Next, talking about addiction and dependence. So once the use of drugs and alcohol in adolescence starts, then it will lead to addiction and also dependence on them. So addiction is a psychological attachment to certain effects such as euphoria and a temporary feeling of well-being associated with drugs and alcohol. So drugs and alcohol, as we had learned earlier, it gives you a hallucinogenic property, and also it gives a sense of euphoria, that is happiness, and people want to be happy in life, right? So they go for shortcuts, and this is one of the shortcuts. So once they fall into the use of drugs and alcohols during the adolescence, then they want that feeling of euphoria, the feeling of happiness, the feeling of hallucination and all that throughout their life, and that can lead to addiction. And with the repeated use of drugs, the tolerance level of the receptors present in a body also increases. And the opioid receptors or the cannabinoid receptors that are present in a central nervous system, they'll keep asking for more and more drugs. So that is when they start to get addicted, because the tolerance against these receptors will fall short because of continuous use of drugs and alcohols, and consequently the receptors respond only to higher dose of drugs. So what happens? First they'll start with a slighter dosage, then the receptors will make your brain ask for more amount. So more amount, because it's like if you need to get euphoria, then you'll need to consume more amount of drugs. So that is when they start consuming more amount of drugs, leading to greater intake and addiction. And in the absence of any guidance or counseling, the person gets addicted and he becomes dependent on their use, because it is quite very difficult to come out of or to get rid of drug and alcohols once we are addicted to it, because without that our body will not function properly, because the receptors will start getting trained only to function when they are being consumed. That is when drugs and alcohols are being consumed. So right in the adolescent age itself, a child needs to be treated properly, and proper counseling and understanding needs to be given for the ill effects that can be caused by drug and alcohol abuse. Now talking about, that is about addiction. Now once we are addicted, our body completely needs to, if it has to function properly, it needs to depend on the drug. So dependence is the tendency of the body to manifest a characteristic and unpleasant withdrawal syndrome if regular dose of drugs or alcohol is abruptly discontinued. So a person who is addicted to drug need to depend on drugs throughout, and he cannot withdraw from the drugs all of a sudden, because it can lead to a lot of symptoms, and sometimes even it can lead to death also. And this is characterized by anxiety. So if a person wants to get rid of drugs, it can lead to anxiety, tremors in the body or shakiness in the body, nausea, that is vomiting sensation, profuse sweating. All this can happen, and bearing with all this, the person can go back to again depending on drugs to get rid of the withdrawal symptoms that are there. So that is why it is always better to prevent than later on search for a cure. And dependence on the drugs leads the patient to ignore all social norms in order to get the sufficient funds to satiate his or her needs. So some people, drugs are quite very costly, right? It's a small quantity itself costs a lot. So they lose their job, because in such a state they can't go for a job again. So in such cases, they'll start doing all sorts of illegal activities to get hold of that drug, because the body itself unknowingly will be demanding more. So that is why it's always better to prevent consuming drugs than later on finding a cure to get rid of the drugs and alcohol. So what are the effects of drug or alcohol abuse? One is, if drugs are taken intravenously, that is injected, then it can lead to AIDS, that is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, and can also cause hepatitis B. Adolescent starts drinking, then it can lead to heavy drinking in adulthood, and coming out of that can be quite difficult. And it can damage the nervous system and liver also. Especially alcohol consumption, it can cause scarring of the liver or liver cirrhosis. So our liver is such an organ which is capable of repairing itself to a certain extent. Beyond, it cannot. It can lead to scarring and later on the death of the person. And also a pregnant woman who is into drugs and alcohol consumption, it can adversely affect the development of the fetus also. Sports person, they use drugs because they need it for their athletics, right? They need that energy, but they tend to misuse it, wherein they misuse narcotic analgesics, anabolic steroids, diuretics, and certain hormones which help them to increase the muscle strength and also create bulkiness in the muscle, and also to promote aggressiveness, which actually will help them in their athletic performance. But nowadays, all that doping test and all that will be conducted. Any small amount of drug is found also, they are disqualified, because anybody by using this, they can win a sport, right? Because they'll have that intense energy to win. So that is why it's being banned. But if taken in a smaller extent, it can help the sports person in their athletics and all that. But usually it is being misused by the sports person. So what are the side effects of these anabolic steroids we will look into. So people who are into sports, if you see some of the females and all that, they'll be quite masculine, right? Why? Because of the anabolic steroids that they take. So overconsumption of that can lead to a lot of effect. What are those? We will look into. So in females, the consumption of anabolic steroids can lead to masculinization. That is, they'll develop muscles and they'll start looking like males. And it can lead to increased aggressiveness. Healthy aggressiveness is needed in sports to perform well, right? But increase in the aggressiveness can also always cause a harm and can cause a lot of mood swings. It can cause depression because it affects the central nervous system. It can cause abnormal menstrual cycles. It can cause excessive hair growth on the face and the body, which usually females do not have. It can cause enlargement of the clitoris, which is a part of the female reproductive system. It can cause hoarsing of the voice or deepening of the voice. The voice will start sounding like a male voice. So these are the effects of anabolic steroids in females. Next, the effects of or side effects of anabolic steroids in males. In males, it can cause acne. That is increased acne, increased aggressiveness, mood swings, depression. It can cause reduction in the size of the testicles. It can therefore causing decrease in the sperm production, and also it can cause dysfunction or problem in the kidney and the liver. And also nowadays, to build muscles, they take a lot of supplements. That supplements if taken in excessive also can cause, because it contains steroids in them, it can cause kidney and liver damage as well. Not just the athletic people, but also the other bodybuilders and all that, all those also, they consume these, which can cause, on a long term, it can cause dysfunctioning of the kidney and the liver. It can cause breast enlargement in males. It can cause premature baldness, and also it can cause enlargement of the prostate gland. So these are the side effects of anabolic steroids in males. Next, talking about the side effects of anabolic steroids in adolescents, that is children who are at the age of 12 to 18. So in adolescence, it can cause severe facial and body acne. It can also cause premature closure of the growth centers. So the long bones which are supposed to grow, they will prematurely stop growing. Therefore, the height of those adolescent children who will also be stunted. So they'll have a stunted growth. They'll have all muscles and all that, but their growth will seem to be stunted. That is, they'll not be tall enough the way they have to be. So these are the side effects of anabolic steroids. So what are the prevention and control measures for drug and alcohol abuse? So one thing is avoid undue peer pressure. So this is an era wherein we are into a lot of stress, be it academic, be it the stress that happens in a family, a lot of separations happening between the parents, all that can put a lot of stress on the children as well, and a lot of stress in the field of education, because the world is becoming quite competitive every day, right? So all this can lead to us walking towards drug and alcohol abuse. So instead of that, what can be done? We can go into yoga, we can do meditations and all that to cope up with the stress. Next is education and counseling. So children, especially in schools and colleges, they need, especially in schools, they need to have a separate subject wherein children can be educated about the adolescence. It's a time when they themselves don't know what needs to be done, what is right and wrong. Proper education and counseling is imparted, then maybe we can avoid the adolescents from falling prey into the drug and alcohol abuse. Next is seeking help from parents and peers. So whatever problems are there, it is always better to have a person to talk to, because talking, maybe the person will help you or not, but at least talking will solve half of your problems. It will bring down half of your stress. So take help from your parents. Be free to tell to your parents. They might scold you at that particular moment. And one more advice for the parents is also there here. Listen to them, understand them, because that is the age where they need to be treated like friends. They need to be understood, and then proper solution needs to be given to them. But if, on the other hand, if you just scold them and give them punishment, they'll just fall prey into drugs and alcohol abuse, then later on it will be a problem to control it. So it is always better. So maybe a friend of yours or something just wanted you to try a drug, and it's always better to go and talk to your parents or your brothers or your relatives what can happen if we consume them, and then decide what you need to do. So therefore, seeking help from parents and peers is always very important. By mistake you happen to fall prey into drug and alcohol abuse, so that also you can talk to your family members and get it sorted out. So it's always better to talk about it than taking our own decisions. Next is seeking professional and medical help. So we have been addicted to drugs and alcohols. We need to come out of it. So during that time, first thing is you need to go and talk to your relatives, your friends, your parents, and then later on go into seek medical or professional help from the doctors or from the counselors. Next is looking for danger signs. So in schools and colleges also, or be it in the home, always look for the child's behavior. Any changes, they are too sleepy, they are not able to concentrate, they are acting a kind of weird from their normal behavior, all that needs to be reported to the parents. The parents need to sit and talk to the kid like a friend, not scold them, get to know what it is, and then decide how the child can be brought out of it. So this looking for danger signs. So always look for your child's behavior. Come to schools and colleges, ask the faculties about what is the behavior of the child. So all this can actually help the children come out of the drugs and the alcohol abuse that they are subjected to. So these are the prevention and control measures that can be taken. So the final thing is always, instead of getting into it, just avoid it. So because later on to cure it, it is really to come out of it is really quite a problem. So this is about this session. So with this, the chapter comes to an end. So I hope you understood the entire sessions of this chapter quite well. So we shall meet again in the coming sessions taking up a new chapter. Thank you.